Welcome to AnimeFan Narrations, Solo Leveling Episode 36, Chapter 85.
Naturally, she didn't offer to help again. Instead, every now and then, she shot a glare in his direction. Jinwoo suppressed another laugh and acted like he didn't notice. It had been a while since he'd felt like laughing inside a dungeon.
It's risky to lose focus.
Especially during his most recent raids. Thinking back on the challenge of the Demon Castle made him shudder. But today felt different. It was refreshing to just tag along unnoticed in a raid like this. Suddenly, Jinwoo stopped in his tracks. Realizing what Jinwoo had sensed, the raiding party quickly followed suit.
They're coming!
Before Sun Gi-hoon could even finish his command, the entire team had already shifted into defensive positions. It happened in the blink of an eye. Jinwoo was impressed.
So this is what it's like to raid with top-tier hunters.
This raid team was on a completely different level from any he had encountered before. Even the gentle-looking female healer had shifted into a battle-ready stance, her hands glowing with energy.
Seems like I won't get a chance to jump in.
Jinwoo's initial concerns faded, though he felt a twinge of disappointment. Just then, the magic beasts appeared. Were they beasts, dogs? Sun Gi-hoon squinted. A pack of creatures resembling hyenas charged at them. Each one was as big as a mid-sized car. Sun Gi-hoon tilted his head, puzzled.
Dungeon jackals?
As they drew closer, his suspicion was confirmed. They were dungeon jackals. Sun Gi-hoon eased his stance, lowering the shield he had raised defensively. One jackal leapt at his neck, but Sun Gi-hoon quickly slammed his shield down on it.
What the? Dungeon jackals?
The rest of the raid team, who had been on high alert, also relaxed, now tilting their heads in confusion. Soon, the cave echoed with the sounds of the dungeon jackals' cries. The beasts were easily dispatched in a matter of moments. The dozen or so jackals were swiftly reduced to lifeless bodies. The hunters brushed off their hands, equally perplexed.
What was that about? I didn't even get to finish casting my spell.
Why would dungeon jackals appear in an A-rank dungeon?
Exactly right. Did the association mess up again?
The hunters' voices grew louder. Normally, you weren't supposed to raise your voice in a dungeon, but the unexpected appearance of dungeon jackals had caught them off guard enough to forget that rule. Sun Gi-hoon surveyed the jackals' bodies and scratched his head in confusion.
Why are beasts from a C-rank dungeon showing up here?
He glanced around, unable to believe what he was seeing. The others seemed just as puzzled, except for one person. Jinwoo was eyeing the jackal corpses with a troubled expression.
These aren't your average jackals.
His eyes narrowed in concentration. He noticed patches of matted fur around their necks, a clear sign they had been tied up at some point.
That means something or someone here raised them.
Intelligent magic beasts. Jinwoo's mind flashed back to the White Walkers from the Red Gate. Creatures with intelligence, regardless of their species, were always tough opponents.
That bad feeling I had, it might have been right.
It didn't bode well.
What are you staring at so intently?
The female healer approached him, gazing blankly at the jackal corpse.
Shh.
Jinwoo raised a finger to his lips. He heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from deeper within the cave.
Here comes the real threat.
Jinwoo stood up. The other hunters began to sense something was off as well.
Oh no.
Get ready for battle.
Sun Gi-hoon shouted, barely holding back his alarm. At last, emerging from the cave's shadows, the true enemy revealed itself. The hunter's eyes widened in shock.
High orcs? Why high orcs of all things?
The high orc warriors stood in a tight formation, each one looking like a seasoned fighter. There were 22 of them. Even a group of regular high orcs would have been a tough challenge. But these were high orc warriors.
Something's not right.
Someone muttered. Who could have expected that after dealing with low-level beasts, they'd be facing these powerful high-level creatures known for their sheer strength? The long spears of the high orcs pointed menacingly at the hunters.
It's almost an even match between the hunters and the high orcs.
Jinwoo quietly moved to the side, finding a spot in the corner. His plan was to stay out of the way and wait for the right moment to intervene. The female healer, however, misunderstood his actions.
Stay hidden over there so you don't get hurt.
For some reason, her comment was mildly irritating. Jinwoo shut his eyes and took a few deep breaths, trying to cool his rising temper. Soon enough, the battle kicked off. As the high orcs charged, Sun Gi-hoon activated a wide-area taunt skill to draw their attention. But the high orcs weren't easily fooled. In no time, the fighter-class hunters clashed with the high orcs. Blood flew everywhere, followed by agonized screams. The mage-class hunters finally released their completed spells, targeting the high orcs. Some of the high orcs hit by the arrow of light had their heads blown clean off, but the spells didn't keep coming. As powerful as the magic was, it had a significant drawback: long casting times. The high orcs were beginning to gain the upper hand in the close combat.
Heal, someone, heal. Hurry, please.
The number of wounded was growing. and the healers were working frantically.
Healer Nim, help.
The female healer rushed from one side of the battlefield to the other.
I'm coming, hang on.
She knelt beside a hunter who had lost an arm and began chanting her healing spells. A bright light enveloped the injured area, and soon, his arm started to regenerate. This was the impressive healing power of an A-rank healer. But while she was intently focused on healing, a large shadow loomed over her. She looked up to find a high orc, one she thought had been defeated, standing above her with an axe raised high.
Ah.
Her face drained of color. There were no allies close enough to help. As the orc's axe came down, rather than fleeing, she threw herself over her patient, shielding him with her body.
No.
She braced herself, eyes squeezed shut, waiting for the impact. But the expected blow never came. Seconds stretched on like hours, and eventually, she cautiously lifted her head. What she saw was something unbelievable. The high orc was suspended in the air, its limbs flailing helplessly.
What?
Her eyes widened in shock. Suddenly, the orc's head ripped away from its body, its spine following with a sickening snap. The sheer force was astonishing.
But...
The healer stared in disbelief at the lifeless orc that had collapsed at her feet.
Huh?
The orc's head was still hanging in the air.
Now there's blood on me.
Jinwoo wrinkled his nose and hurled the high orc's severed head. The head collided with another high orc, knocking it to the ground. Its neck twisted at an unnatural angle, clearly ensuring it wouldn't be rising again.
That's 2 down.
Jinwoo shifted his focus. He was currently cloaked in his stealth ability. Neither the high orcs nor the hunters had any idea he was there. Jinwoo had been concerned about drawing unwanted attention from the other hunters by intervening, but his stealth skill provided the perfect workaround. Now, he could act freely without anyone knowing. A smirk tugged at his lips.
Time to have some fun.
At that moment, he spotted the raid leader, Sun Ji-hoon, struggling against 3 high orcs simultaneously. In a flash, Jinwoo dashed toward him with lightning speed.
Solo Leveling, Chapter 86.
The distance between him and the high orcs felt both long and short at the same time. Jinwoo channeled his strength into his legs, pushing off the ground in a powerful leap. When he landed, he found himself standing silently behind the massive figures of the high orcs. As he touched down, a thought crossed his mind.
Taking out the high orcs like this would be simple.
But then what would be the purpose of using stealth? The hunters in this raid, including Son Gi-hoon, were some of the best in the country. If they witnessed the high orcs being slaughtered by some invisible force, it wouldn't take long for them to figure out that someone was using stealth. Well, almost all of them would realize. That naive female hunter seemed oblivious to such details.
Honestly, it's not a big deal if I get caught.
Still, with his remeasurement around the corner, Jinwoo wanted to avoid drawing any unnecessary attention from the Hunters Guild. Initially, he had considered sitting back and waiting for the raid to completely fall apart before stepping in. But it was becoming clear that the damage to the hunters was mounting. After all, the female healer had almost been killed earlier. So determination flashed in Jinwoo's eyes.
I'll have to strike without being seen.
His strategy was set. This entire thought process occurred in just 1 or 2 seconds. In the blink of an eye, Baruka's Tanto and Nightkiller appeared in his hands. These days, the daggers materialized without him even having to consciously summon them.
When did I bring these out?
Amused even in the heat of battle, Jinwoo smirked. The familiar feel of the dagger steadied his racing heart. Thank goodness no one could see him now. Grinning like this in the middle of the chaotic skirmish might have made him look unhinged. Especially to the raid leader, who was currently locked in combat with 3 high orcs and drenched in sweat.
All right, let's deal with these guys first.
Jinwoo sprang into action. Crouching low, he gripped his daggers in reverse and slashed across a high orc's Achilles tendon. The high orc howled in agony as its ankles were severed out of nowhere. And this was just the start. Jinwoo moved with a fluid grace, slipping between the high orcs like a dancer. Baruka's Tanto found its mark in the ribs of one orc, while Nightkiller sliced behind the knees of another. The rush of adrenaline couldn't numb the pain of their wounds. Taken completely off guard, the high orc warriors faltered, their movements stiffening. That brief hesitation was all Sun Gi-hoon needed to launch his counterattack. Panting heavily, Sun Gi-hoon looked up. His longsword was buried deep in the heart of a high orc. The high orc that had been glaring fiercely, its lips trembling in frustration, suddenly rolled its eyes back and collapsed with a heavy thud. The tanker clenched his fists tightly in victory.
Yes, we've got this!
He continued to take down the high orcs one after another, feeling unstoppable. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was constantly on the move, darting through the dungeon without pause. In his slowed perception of time, he glided around, subtly tipping the balance of the fights. He made sure his interference wasn't obvious. Every time he slipped past a high orc, small but precise cuts appeared on their bodies. The high orcs grew increasingly confused as wounds mysteriously appeared on their bodies, throwing them into disarray. The elite hunters wasted no time capitalizing on this chaos, landing strike after strike.
Wait, is this fight getting easier?
What's going on?
Are we really taking down this many high orcs without losing a single person?
Many of the hunters had braced themselves for the grim possibility that one or two of them might not make it out alive. Yet, against all odds, the battle was turning overwhelmingly in their favor. A hunter's mace came crashing down on a high orc's head, ending the creature's life with a sickening crunch. Just then, a familiar voice echoed in Jinwoo's mind.
You have leveled up.
Ooh!
All his efforts were paying off. He had leveled up. Even though he hadn't dealt fatal blows or outright killed many of them, it seemed his support was enough to earn experience points.
Thanks for watching Solo Leveling on AnimeFan Narrations. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for updates. Share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.